And Energy Secretary Chris Wright, who was along for this trip with the president in Abu Dhabi, and he joins us from there now. Secretary Wright, good to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Martha.
You know, we've been watching you and all the other members of the cabinet right behind the president at so many of these events. So I guess my first question for you is, describe what this was like to be in the middle of these really productive and sweeping trips.
Look, I know it's an overused word, but it has been truly inspiring. The leaders of the Middle East we have met with have been truly gobsmacked by this president, who's got an optimism, a passion. He's focused on peace and prosperity, and he humbly listens to every one of them to understand their concerns and their issues, engages in an on-the-spot dialogue. In fact, the ending the Syrian boycott, that was a result of just universal feedback of saying, hey, this is the right thing to do. We got to give Syria a chance. All the allies in the region believe this, and the president clearly saw, stand with your allies. Let's give it a try. Sounds like the right move. And bam, decision made, crowd erupts.
So explain to us, your role in terms of what you were looking for. There were a lot of defense deals that were done here, but in terms of energy and the resources in these countries and the deals, give us a little insight into what was discussed and what you think might change now as a result of these growing relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the biggest focus. The single biggest focus is these countries have run their businesses very well. So they generate enormous amounts of cash, and they've got to deploy that, and they want to invest that in the United States of America, in our energy infrastructure, in AI, in healthcare, in technology, in all sorts of ways. But they want to do it in a way that's a partnership with the United States, in a way that helps you push economic opportunity forward in our country. Of course, we've also talked about American investment and involvement, as there is in all three of these countries, in their energy production and in their development of technology and telecom and AI. So it's just been about how do we make both of our people better by cooperating and co-investing.
So, Secretary, during the last administration, we saw a lot of these nations develop stronger ties, really, with Russia and with China, as the Biden administration was not super energetic about engaging with them. We remember the very strained relationship with the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia between Biden. Maybe we can put this up, this famous fist bump moment when President Biden approached him after calling him a pariah. So do you think that does this distance Russia from some of these countries and open up a wider relationship with us and not them?
Absolutely, Martha. Look, all of these countries are natural allies of the United States, and they've all been allies of the United States since the founding of their nations. So they're very clear. We send our kids to American schools. We all speak English. We don't want to speak Russian or Chinese. They are our natural allies, but that cold shoulder they got for 4 years, it's a little bit disheartening. Slowed investment into our country. It made them more worried about their national security. Obviously, Iran is a major threat here. They want to work with us to solve that problem where, Biden gave Iran the warm hug and the cold shoulder to everyone else. And I think it really set the region back. But they are ready to go. They love America. They love Americans. And yes, I think you will see an amazing growth in the relationships with them that will bring prosperity, but I think it's also the road to peace. President Trump is going to bring peace in the Middle East by bringing Iran back into the club of nations and ending their nuclear program.
Let me ask you, if I may, because for a lot of Americans, they think of September 11th when they think of Saudi Arabia and when they think of these nations who have in the past harbored terrorist organizations. So what was your sense when you listened to these leaders about how sincere they are about putting that in the past and having prosperity and peace that extends and isolates those elements of their societies?
Oh my gosh, in talking to the Saudi leadership, I love history, so we talked about history. I asked them about their darkest days. Their darkest days was 9/11 until 2005. For 4 years, And they felt shame. They felt horror. You know, obviously this wasn't the government, this wasn't the people I'm meeting with that did that, but that Saudi citizens did that was truly a crushing blow to that society. But think of what's happened since then. In fact, in Saudi Arabia, for example, I don't think we have had any society in the history of the world that has more rapidly and completely liberated women in their society.
Absolutely.
In 5 or 6 years. It is the technical universities I visited. They are 50% men, 50% women. Women are half of the officials and people we're dealing with. The rapid liberation, involvement of women at all levels of society is just tremendous. I mean, we did that in our society before, but we did it gradually. They're doing it abruptly. They are going all in on Western values, and it's quite exciting to see.
It sure is. It's been extraordinary watching this over the last several days, and it's going to be quite something to watch where it goes from here. Thank you so much, Chris Wright, Secretary of Energy, who was right behind the president for many of these events over the last several days. So we're glad to have an opportunity to hear about it from you directly. Thank you, Secretary Wright.
Thanks, Martha. Take care.
So we have more brutal headlines that keep coming out about former